In this video, we'll know some explanation and examples and clarifying the our novel this year, A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. Let's begin together. First, we will know some information about the writer, the author, Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens, he was one of the greatest English writers of the Victorian era, 19th century. He created some of the world's most well-known fictional characters and is generally regarded as the greatest novelist of that period. The novel setting. The novel is set in two cities of London and Paris. So we have the novel in two cities. That's why it's A Tale of Two Cities. Their surrounding areas before and during the French Revolution. The characters. First, we have Dr. Manette and Mr. Lorry, his friend, Lucy Manette, who is Dr. Manette's daughter, Miss Pross, who is the servant or the maid and one who looked after Lucy Manette, Charles Darnay and Sidney Carton, who are exactly look like each other, Madame Devarge, who is Monsieur Devarge's wife, and Monsieur Devarge, who is the owner of the wine shop. First, we have George Slurry. George Slurry is an officer at Tellson's Bank, a loyal friend to the Manette family. Mr. Lorry shepherded the family out of Paris after the doctor's releases from prison and during the Revolution. We have Lucy Manette. Lucy Manette was a beautiful young woman recognized for her kindness and compassion. After being reunited with her father, Dr. Manette, she cares for him and remains devoted to him, even after her marriage to Charles Darnay. Dr. Alexander Manette. Dr. Alexander Manette is Lucy's father. He is a French doctor. He was imprisoned in the Bastille for 18 years. He suffers from mental trauma from the experience. He loses his reason and thinks he is a shoemaker. Charles Darnay. Charles Darnay is a Frenchman of noble family. His real name was Charles Evermond. He is from the Evermond family and he is Lucy's husband. Sidney Carton. Sidney Carton was an unsuccessful lawyer. He looks exactly like Darnay. He loves Lucy very much and he sacrificed his life to save Lucy's husband, who is Charles Darnay. Ernest Devarge. Ernest Devarge is the owner of a wine shop in the Port Saint Antonio section of Paris. He is a leader of the Jacques, a roving band of peasants during the French Revolution. He was the leader of the men for the French Revolution, and his wife, Madame Devarge, was the leader for the women in the French Revolution. Madame Devarge. Ernest Devarge's wife is called Madame Devarge. She uses her knitting to write the names of the people that should be killed. So, if you look in the novels, you will find her knitting all the time. She was knitting the names of the people who are going to be killed during the French Revolution. Miss Pross. Miss Pross is Lucy's nurse and housekeeper. She remains Lucy's devoted servant and protector even during the violent chaos of the Revolution. Mr. Stryver. Mr. Stryver was an unambitious lawyer. He proves Charles Darnay's innocence in London. He aspires bravely to marry Lucy. Now we will know some information about before the Revolution. Before revolutionary France, the caste system in France left the people of France poor and starving, while the nobility prospered. So, the nobility people who was at that time the Evermond family, they were living wealthy and they leave people in a very poor situation. Taxation was very high on all items because France didn't trade many goods, and that is how the government earned its money. So they get the money from taxes. You know, the taxes, when they get taxes from the farmers and the peasants people, The people were also made to pay 1/10 of what they earned to the church, so they don't have any money left for themselves. Under the rule of King Louis, France entered a state of financial crisis due largely to the 7-Year War and support America during the American Revolution. Over half of the country budget was used to pay off debt. In 1791, he was tried by the National Convention and charged with treason. He was executed on January 21, 1793. His execution marked the end of absolute monarchy in France. The causes of the French Revolution. Why the French Revolution happened? The French Revolution was brought about by the suffering of France's peasants, who were literally starving, and the general social problems in France. However, rumor has it that Marie Antoinette diamond necklace affairs was a catalyst of the revolution. Storming of the Bastille. The Bastille, it was a very famous prison in France, and this is the place where Dr. Manette was kept. It's a very famous one because it was strange and very fearing. The event, the Bastille, was stormed by the mob joined by some of the king's soldiers on July 14, 1789. The commander of the prison, Delaunay, attempted to surrender, but the mob denied his request. He, like all guards, was killed as they poured through the gates. Later in the day, the prisoners were released. This event is still annually celebrated in France. What's the summary of the story? First, Dr. Manette is kept in prison for about 18 years. He was kept in a cell called 101 North Tower. Then he was released after the 18 years, and he was at Monsieur Devor's wine shop in a room. Then Mr. Lorry and Lucy and Miss Pross went to Paris to look at Dr. Manette. When they entered, they found him making shoes. He was suffering mentally and bodily. When Lucy meets her dad for the first time, she was shocked, and he didn't realize her at all. She was trying to get involved with him, but he didn't realize her at all. In London, when the jury noticed the likeness of Carton and Charles. Then after this, when they returned back to London, Dr. Manette was a little bit recovered after a while. Then there was a trial for Charles Darnay. Charles Darnay was accused of spying to the king. So in this trial, we have Sidney Carton, who appeared, and he said that he looks exactly like Charles Darnay, and this was the reason why Charles Darnay was proved that he is innocent, not guilty. After the trial in London, Lucy fainted because she said that she saw Charles Darnay on the ship, and she thought that this was a proof to his guiltiness, and she is going to hurt him. In France, the cruel Marquis Evermont, who was Charles Darnay's uncle, runs down a common child with his courage and doesn't care. He just paid some coins to the child's father. Lucy and Darnay gets married. Then after the marriage of Lucy and Darnay, her father undergoes bad situation again. So Miss Pross and Mr. Lorry breaks the shoemaking bench of the doctor. Then the rebels come. Then they asked for Charles Darnay to come back to France because he was written from the people who are in the Evermont family. So his servant sent him a letter asking him to come back and save his life. Darnay is sentenced to death, so they told him that Darnay is going to be executed. Carton sacrificed his life to save Darnay, so he went inside the prison as if he is Darnay and let Darnay came out from the prison as if he was Carton. After a while, when Sydney Carton knew this and knew that Lucy was broken, so he sacrifices his life and he went to inside the prison and give Charles his dress, his clothes, and Charles can be released out as if he is a Carton, and Carton is going to be put in the guillotine and executed. Then Sydney Carton is recalled to life, and they lived happily ever after. And at the end, Sydney Carton was killed by the guillotine instead of Charles Darnay.